JP, if there's any question that and I assume most human beings want to know, we have a deep desire to live. We know we're conscious, and the end of that consciousness with death, seemingly certain, is perhaps the most frightening thing that we can encounter. I admit I feel this way. I want to come to you not just as a theologian and a believer, but as a philosopher, to try to dissect and try to understand what is this concept of an afterlife and what kind of progress can we make in understanding it.
Well, I think there are certain pieces of evidence that there is an afterlife, and I'll state them real quickly and kind of give you my assessment of them. I think the first branch of evidence is theistic dependent. In other words, whether it's reasonable to believe in an afterlife or not depends on whether you also think it's rational to believe in God. So the question of an afterlife strikes me as a system-dependent question. It's a part of a larger system that is the appropriate direct object of rationality consideration. Since I think it's rational to believe that God exists, then I have a reason for thinking there's an afterlife. And it would go something like this. God is not finished with us in this life. He has projects for us. He loves us. There are injustices in this life. He values persons because he made them and they bear his image. He is not about to annihilate them or snuff them out of existence. And so God will sustain us in existence because we will always matter to him, whether we want to be with him or not. And so one reason for believing in an afterlife has to do with the fact that there is a God of a certain kind, and he values persons and will sustain them forever. And
I think most religions would be compatible in this thinking.
Yeah, with different nuances, perhaps.
Sure.
The two empirical reasons I have for believing in life after death, the first one is the resurrection of Jesus. If, in fact, he rose from the dead, based on certain kinds of evidence, then
that's your prototype.
Then he has gone there and told us about it, and I'm going to listen to what he has to say. The second are a bevy of near-death experiences. You can write Ichabod off of all those and say they're anecdotal. I happen to think, though, there is a class of near-death experiences where people learn things there is absolutely no way they could know, like what was on the roof of the hospital or what their family was talking about 12 miles away at lunch while they were dying in the hospital, that are impossible to adequately explain through deprivation to the brain of oxygen and various things like that. Given, then, that there's evidence from near-death experiences and the resurrection of Jesus, those both provide evidence that there is some kind of an afterlife. And so I think that these are theistic dependent, but I think the two empirical arguments can be added.
The theistic dependency I can accept flat out. And if I would accept the God of any one of different religions, I can quickly make the logical inference that that God would, if he created me and all of us, that there would be something subsequent. I understand that. Of course, I am imbued with the scientific tradition, and my old brain science a background would see that everything that we are, our memories, our capabilities, are resident in the brain. So if you have brain problems, strokes, traumas, injuries, that memories, all different things can be wildly dissociated from another, so these things can disperse and even disappear. We can cut memory in any different number of ways. You can lose your old memories by injury. You can lose the ability to form new memories where every single minute would be a fresh situation. Every time you'd see me, you'd introduce yourself all over again. I mean, every 5 minutes, because you can't form a current memory. So I see the scientific approach that there is very that a continuance beyond bodily life would be impossible.
Well, the truth is there is no scientific approach. There are only scientists who have their own approach. And scientists differ on the question, and they differ as philosophers, not scientists. Because the question of whether the mind or consciousness can exist outside the brain is not a scientific question. So it is merely a sociological fact that many scientists hold certain things, but they don't hold it as scientists. They hold it as those who are engaging in as rather novice philosophers, I would claim, about science. Let me dispute the claim that everything can be rooted in the brain. If that's true, if everything is rooted in the brain, there's no free will. because that means that consciousness is an epiphenomenon. It's a byproduct. It's caused by the brain, but it doesn't in turn cause anything. If that's true, then the acceptance of scientific theories is determined by your brain chemistry.
So your afterlife belief is rooted in your belief that consciousness is real and independent and is a different substance than the brain. I understand that.
Yes.
I understand that. We want to understand its implications. And I want to go back to this concept of memory, because if your brain it's impossible to form new memories because of an injury.
Yes.
Are those new memories resident in this consciousness that will ultimately be immortal?
Yeah, I'll give you an analogy in a minute. But the idea that memories are in the brain is absolutely gobbledygook. It makes no sense at all. That's about like saying that the note C weighs 15 pounds. It's a category fallacy. Memories aren't the sorts of things that can be spatially located in a piece of chemistry. Any more than sounds are in a record or a CD.
I understand the philosophical argument, but you didn't answer my question. My question was, if a person cannot form a current memory, that's impossible to form a current memory, are those current memories being formed in the soul that will have an immortal existence and therefore have that memory in an afterlife?
And that leads to my analogy. Suppose that I were in an automobile. I was strapped in the front seat with seat belts. I couldn't get out, and I'm trapped there. I am inside a car, and my ability to move around town is going to depend upon whether the car's working. If the engine breaks down, I can't move anywhere. If the steering wheel is of such a nature that it will only turn right, then I'm not going to be able to turn left. That doesn't prove that I am either the car or a part of the car. Maybe I am, but it's consistent with that I am an agent that uses the car. Now, what happens if I'm able to get out of the car? All of the evidence of my limitations while in the car provides no evidence whatsoever about my limitations or lack thereof when I'm out of the car, on the assumption that there's life after death.
Right. I want to stick on life after death.
On the assumption there's...
I want to see what follows from this. I follow the analogy. But what happens in life after death? Does that consciousness remember things that it was impossible for the brain to lay down during that period?
Absolutely. Because the brain is a temporary vehicle that's used to access memory, but it's not essential any more than a steering wheel is a temporary vehicle to guide me around town. But once I'm out of the car, I don't need the steering wheel any longer. While we're in the body, the brain is an important vehicle. Memories aren't in the brain. I have no idea what that means.
So, look, I mean, so many things follow from that. I think we're going to wind up with then blind people who were blind during their whole life. Their immortal consciousness will be as if they have been seeing?
They will be able to see.
Not be able to see in the future when they're...
No, they'll see.
They will have had seen their whole life? When they are an immortal, when they've passed to this great beyond,
yes.
Okay, and they've been blind their whole life, will that immortal soul's memory be as if they had seen their whole life?
No more than when I get out of the car, I will be able to say that I could move around.
I can move around now, but I wasn't be able to move around before.
Well, I won't have memories of things that weren't there. I will only be able to access memories that I formed as memories.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. So again, a brain that is incapable of forming long-term memory and it only sees in the moment, when it becomes immortal or when it passes to the afterlife, will it have memories that it was unable to form?
No. Memories that you formed and lost your ability to access them, you'll be able to recover. But you won't have memories of things you weren't able to have memories of. I mean, no.
But you had the experience.
But if the experience didn't form as a memory...
The only reason it didn't form is because it's not forming because there's a malfunction in a physical structure called the hippocampus in your brain.
Oh, well, then there are two ways you can go with this. One is that you can say the memory is actually stored in the mind, but you can't can't access it because of a problem with the brain.
That's what I'm trying to
see. In which
see.
case, you would be able to recover that memory. Or you can say, I had the experience, but I wasn't able to turn it into a memory so that when I escape the body, I won't be able to have that memory.
And which way do you believe?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fair.
One more thing about this, Robert. If there is an afterlife like I believe, this is a very, very important question. People shouldn't go through life being indifferent to this. They ought to do everything they can to learn about whether there's an afterlife and try to find out what it's like and how it informs day-to-day life here on earth.